Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to the summary video for 2nd Kings. These are the biggest differences in the book 2nd Kings, or fourth book of the kingdoms. So we start in chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 35, the big difference here is we see Elisha bowing himself on the child 7 times. In the Masoretic, it says he stretched himself upon the child. And it also mentions that the child opened his eyes. In the Masoretic, it says the child sneezed 7 times. Okay, so we can see, what is he doing here? He's doing CPR. Either CPR or praying. So in chapter 5 now, verse 18, it says, when he bows down in the house of Rimmon, versus when I bow down myself in Rimmon. So we can, if you read the narrative, it'll make more sense as to why that is a big difference. So that's chapter 5. Okay, so I did read the full context. It is Naaman who is saying, I shall bow down in the house of Rimmon. In the Masoretic, he is saying, when my master, when he bows down. So he's talking about his master in the Septuagint. In the Masoretic, Naaman is saying, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon. Okay, chapter 6, it says here, verse 11, this is a big difference. The king of Syria asking his servants, will you not tell me who betrays me to the king of Israel? So tell me who's the mole, who's the traitor. In the Masoretic, what is it saying? Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? So yes, he's still a mole, but not as, I think the language is a lot more straightforward as to, this is a traitor, this is the one who betrays me. Okay, so I did the math, and you're saving at least 4 hours by watching this short video, the summary video. Otherwise, you'd be watching for 4 hours and 40 minutes of the long form video. So in this summary video, we're just going to hit the big highlights, the biggest differences. So continuing on, in chapter 9, verse 16, there's an omission of the following. So Joram, king of Israel, was getting healed of the arrow wounds wherewith the Syrians had wounded him in Ramath in the war with Hazael, king of Syria. For he was a strong and a mighty man. All that was omitted. What does it say in the Masoretic? It just says, for Joram lay there. We have no idea that this is what was happening, that he was wounded in this way, that he was getting healed, and even regarding the king of Syria. Actually, I think this is referring to the king, to Joram, as a strong and mighty man, but it could be wrong. Okay, there's a lot more in this chapter. So verse 17, he tells him to say peace, shalom, salam, versus is it peace? So one's a statement, the other is a question. In verse 18, there's a statement, an expression used here, turn behind me. Actually, it's used in both, so that's not so much a difference. Verse 20, the driver drives Jehu, the son of Nemesi, for it is with furious haste. This is probably better rendered in an English vernacular. Jehu, the son of Nemesi, the driver, drives, for it is with furious haste, or simply with fury. Versus the driving is like the driving of Jehu, for he drives furiously. Okay, verse 32. We have a significant difference, but big enough to warrant being mentioned in this video. He talks to the lady in the window who we know is Jezebel, but she's put on makeup. She's put on specifically eye makeup. And he asks her, who are you? Come down with me. So he doesn't know who she is, does not recognize her. So he asks her to join him so that he can inspect her more closely, or perhaps get her to join him. Versus who is on my side? Who? So, who is allied with him? He might be referring to her, but it's hard to say whether he truly is. Okay, chapter 10, there's a great omission here in verse 21. It's actually the contents of the letter that Jehu sent throughout all Israel, and it says the following: Now then, let all servants and all his priests and all his prophets come. Let none be lacking, for I am going to offer a great sacrifice. Whosoever shall be missing shall not live. So all the servants of this name came, and all his priests and all his prophets. And all of that I just read to you was omitted from the Masoretic. Okay, this one on the surface does not seem like a big difference, but this is from chapter 11, verse 4. So it's talking about Jehoiada sent and took the captains of hundreds of the Hori and of the Rasim, brought them to him into the house of Hashem, and made a covenant of Hashem with them. So this is not a simple covenant as the Masoretic would assume. This is a covenant of Hashem and possibly with Hashem himself. So that is very important, because once you make a covenant with an Elohim, your life is on the line. If you break that covenant, the consequences could possibly be your death. Chapter 14, verse 26, big difference. Mentioning in the Masoretic, let's look at the Masoretic first. Talking about who was left in Israel. For there was not any shut up, nor any left. So nobody is left. What does it say in the Septuagint? They were few in number, straitened and in want, and destitute. I rest my case, okay? Verse 27. Big difference. The seed of Israel versus the name of Israel. So that is important. Hashem has a promise not to blot out the seed, meaning the physical ancestors of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not just the name of, and then another people can replace them. Chapter 16, speaking of peoples, we see a different group of peoples being identified here. We have the Syrians in the Masoretic, and then we have the Edomites in the Septuagint. And even when we click on this reference to see what it actually means, it admits that there's an error here. It says a clerical error. It should be Edomite, not Assyrian. Not Syrian, I should say. Not to be confused with Assyrian. All right, moving on. Chapter 17 now, in verse 4, we have a difference here of a conspiracy, which means an unlawful alliance or rebellion, mutiny, versus iniquity. So he found iniquity in Hosea. So that is the charge here. It's not that they had an unlawful uprising, but there was sin found in Hosea. Verse 14, this is significant because in the Masoretic, it mentions that they hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers. So they matched the stubbornness of their fathers. Not so in the Septuagint. This is one of the rare instances where Israel is depicted as worse. And we see that here. They listened not, they hearkened not, and made their neck harder than the neck of their fathers. So they surpassed the stubbornness of their fathers. We have a big difference, a huge difference, in fact, in verse 20. And I even titled a video after this. And it reads as following: And Hashem rejected all the seed of Israel. Right there in the Masoretic. The Septuagint, what does it say? And Hashem was angry with the whole seed of Israel. So one is saying Hashem rejected them. Not saying he never did, temporarily or for a time, but that's not what the text says. He was angry with them, and this is what he did as a result. Verse 34 talks about how these people, these Babylonians from these various cities or areas, in the Masoretic it states that they do not fear Hashem. Okay, this is one of the kind of satanic lies, Because all you have to do is add a not. It's very subtle, and then it changes the whole story. What we read in the Septuagint, however, is they fear Hashem. They do fear him. And verses 32 and 33 contradict this verse clearly. It says they feared Hashem. Again, they feared Hashem in both translations. They do according to their custom, versus neither do they after their statutes, which is nonsense, doesn't make any sense in the Masoretic. A punctuation should be added here as well. It should read according to their manner or commandment, which Hashem commanded the sons of Jacob, whose name he made Israel. Hashem made a covenant with them. And then so on and so forth. He charged them saying, so that's where I would place the punctuation personally, because in the original scrolls, there are no punctuation marks, let alone exclamation marks or any sort. There are no chapter breaks, no verse breaks. That's up to the translators and the reader to discern those things. And I believe this is a parenthetical statement, what we read here at the end of verse 34, in regards to Israel, up to verse 40. Otherwise, this verse makes no sense, because these Babylonians are essentially culturally appropriating and replacing Israel in the eyes of Hashem. If you read it, if you read 34 to 40, applying to the Babylonians, and then in verse 40, we see here a big difference. Neither shall you comply with their practice, which they follow, versus howbeit they did not hearken, but they did after their former manner. So Hashem is speaking with Israel in the Septuagint, don't follow what they do, versus narrating just how Israel had failed. So again, being harsh on Israel. Chapter 18 now, we see Rabshakeh speaking to the Israelites, and he speaks thus in the Masoretic. Let not Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him lie to you and trick you. Versus let not Hezekiah encourage you with his words. With words. Verse 32. Again, he continues on. It continues on with this difference. Actually, it's different here. It actually says deceive in the Septuagint this time. When he persuades you, versus for he deceives you. So now he outright gets to the point and says, okay, he's actually lying to you. Now we're in chapter 19, and we see an escalation here. Rabshakeh is not only using his language to abuse and attack the king of Israel, now the actual king of Israel behind the king of Israel, who is their Elohim. And he's saying here, let not your Elohim, in whom you trust, deceive you. In the Masoretic, what is it saying? In the Septuagint, let not your Elohim, on whom you trust, encourage you. Again, we notice this continuous difference. Notice the escalation. Again, from saying, do not let Hezekiah encourage you, to now the Elohim of Israel. Chapter 20 and verse 17, it says here, there shall not fail a word which the Lord has spoken, which Hashem has spoken in the Septuagint. Verses, nothing shall be left. Saith Hashem. Sorry, I had to laugh at that, because that is so wildly different. One is saying, what I say will stand, whatever he declares will be accomplished, as opposed to nothing shall be left in regards to whatever Babylon is taking away and carrying out of Israel. Chapter 23 now, we see in verse 5 in the Masoretic, and to the planets. So we don't get the idea of what it's talking about. We just think, okay, we assume, oh, the 9 planets, the 8 planets in the solar system. No. The Septuagint refers to them as Maseroth in the Hebrew, which means constellations. If you look at the entry, it actually is Mazala, which means constellations. The zodiac signs, the 12 signs, as the footnote of the Septuagint reads. And then Job 38 verse 32 refers to this as well. Okay, this one is a difference of a lot of money. So we have 1 talent of gold versus 100 talents. So this is 100-fold greater tribute that they have to take from them, that they have to give. Okay, so that's all for this book. That's a summary video, probably one of the shortest summary videos we've ever done. So we're going to start the book of First Chronicles shortly. Maybe not today, possibly tomorrow. We will see. But I'm very excited to start that and eventually complete it. So thank you very much for your support, for your time, for your attention. Till next time, I bid you all Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, peace be unto you, and Maranatha.